Thanks for joining us today. We are here to discuss the passing of legendary Arkansas football coach and athletic director Frank Broyles. And joining me is Chip Souza, the sports editor of the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Thanks very much, Chip, for coming in today. I want to talk about a project that you were really spearheaded a few years ago, about a book that really was based around buckets. You've mentioned buckets of really never before seen and really not widely circulated photos of the life of Frank Broyles. How did you get involved in the project, and how did you approach the Broyles family with your idea for the project?
So we had done a special section when Frank had announced, he was stepping down as the athletic director in 2007, and we knew he was going to have a time with the foundation for a while. We didn't know how long that was going to be, but we knew it was going to be for a little while. And so when it became clear that time was up, we knew that we wanted to put together a book commemorating him, because a lot of people in Northwest Arkansas, I got to remember, this is not anything like it was when Frank first came here. There's a lot of people here who really didn't know who Frank Broyles was, other than maybe an ABC broadcaster or something at one time. So this was an opportunity for us to go back and really tell his story from the beginning, from his birth in Decatur, Georgia, up until his last days as an athletic director. So we got together, and our ad director at that time, Crystal Costa, she's the one who kind of came up with the idea, and we got together and kind of set a timeline for it. We wanted it to be ready to go, like for the Christmas, for Christmas at time. Somebody wanted to order it, they could make a really nice Christmas gift. And so we began the process. We went to the Broyles family, and they just gave us absolute anything we wanted. We could use anything we wanted, any of the photos, anything that we wanted, and just pretty much kind of stayed back and let us kind of do this book.
And did they just have all that available in the home and invited you into the home and plow through these photos? You could take them with you, or how was that process?
We did. There were like 3 enormous plastic tubs of photos and all kinds of correspondence and handwritten notes from Frank to his late wife, Barbara, and just everything you can imagine. It was his entire office at the foundation that was put into the boxes. So we went to Frank's home up on Lover's Lane in Fayetteville, and we spent time there. We spent time in our office. Frank came in. In fact, I got a funny story about that. A lot of the photos, I didn't know who the people were in the photos. They were candid shots back when he was coaching here, and so we didn't really know who they were. So we brought Frank in one afternoon to help us identify the photos, a lot of the people in the photos, not knowing if he could do that, because Frank's, remember, he was in his 80s, and we didn't know, what kind of day he was going to have. But when we came in and we put them all up on a big flat screen TV, and as soon as they came on, Frank, he knew, he immediately said, yeah, that's so-and-so, that's Hayden Fry, that's, this, he knew exactly who these people were. And so we had gone through this for about an hour that day, and Frank's son Hank had brought him to the office, and Hank's a real estate agent, and he had an appointment to get to, and he looks at his watch. He's like, "Dad, I got an appointment, here. I need to get going." Frank's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. These boys will take me home," And it was just a really cool, something I'll never forget. It was awesome to get to spend time with him like that.
Right, and you've got your own signature Frank Broyles impression. Absolutely. As everyone and of a certain age does. When did you realize, when you were jumping into this project, when did you realize that you had really struck on a really neat idea and a great idea for a book?
Paul, something I didn't even know about, and because I'm not from Arkansas, I didn't get here until the 2000s, so I didn't really know this. And my recollection of Frank Broyles was as an ABC college football commentator. Right. That's how I knew remembered him. I had no idea that he was a 3-sport star at Georgia Tech. I had no idea about that. And he could have, in fact, he was drafted professionally to play football, to play basketball, and as a baseball player. So that was to me an eye-opening thing. Like, wow, this, we think of Frank Broyles as just, the guy who's, been the AD here, but he had just a tremendous life before he ever got to Arkansas.
Right, and it's got to be rewarding to put that into a book to give to people that didn't understand his history of more than just a football coach.
Absolutely, it was, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who was educated by that. So that's what I thought was kind of the most the neatest thing about it, was the things I didn't know that now I was able to get that kind of infinite knowledge on.
What was the time frame from putting all of these pictures and documents, from going through the discovery process and then putting into a book form and getting it to the market?
It took about 9 months. We spent about 9 months going through photos, talking with family members. I went down to Little Rock and did a lot of research down there back through the old Democrat-Gazette, or actually Democrat and Gazette archives, and spent 2 or 3 days down there doing that. We talked to a lot of his former colleagues and things, and family members, and so it took a long time, but obviously the project was well worth it.
Right. And what was the reception? How was it received initially?
They loved it. It was basically it's a photo book it doesn't have a lot of writing in it, and a lot of the writing was based on research and things that we'd gotten out of previous stories. But they liked it because it's Frank. That's to them it was him, and it was, and it also, we really had a lot of stuff about Barbara in there, and that was just that could have been a book itself.
Right.
He and Barbara, that romance and the way that happened in their life together could have been a book by itself.
How did you determine what goes in, what's left out? I mean, we're talking about Frank Broyles and his career, and as you mentioned, a well-documented 3-sport, wonderful All-American athlete to accomplished administrator, broadcaster, coach, and everything in between. How did you decide what made it into the book and didn't go into a 400-page book, which I'm sure is something you could have produced as well with the content?
Right. Well, we felt like we wanted to hit the most important things that people didn't really know about. I mean, there's been books about what Frank did as a football coach, and there's been books and statue for him for what he did as an AD. But like I said, a lot of what people didn't know was the early part. They didn't know that when Frank was in high school, he went to one school on one side of the street, and Barbara went to another school, and he just happened to see her at school one day and sought her out, and she was dating someone else, and he basically pulled the other guy aside, and so, and that was a funny story, that he told, and that's how he and Barbara got together. Is he knew she was the one for him, and so that's something a lot of people, unless you were really tight with the Broyles family, you wouldn't know that.
Right.
So we tried to maybe hit on those things first and foremost, and give big play to things that people didn't really know that much about him, and then we kind of spent the end of the book documenting the career that everybody here knows about.
Right. And are you still some steady sales of the book? Where can someone buy it, or
you can still get it? It's still available through the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. You can get it. You can order it online. You could probably contact the main number and still get it. So I'm lucky. The book that you see today is one that Frank signed for me. I'll treasure it, forever. We had a big book signing at the office, and there were a lot of people who came, and he signed books for him and things. So that's something I will always treasure. Not just the book itself, but because Frank personalized it to me. Right. So,
as a member of the sports media here in Northwest Arkansas, do you have a favorite recollection of Coach Broyles, or do you remember the last time you got to see him or visit with him?
Well, in fact, that day at the office was probably one of the last times we did, because that kind of wrapped up the book as far as getting photos in there that we needed to have ID'd and to spend time with him, and so that was a lot of fun. I'll tell you one of the first things I remember about Frank Broyles. I came here in 2004 in January. It was basketball season, and it was Stan Heath's first year. And back in those days at Bud Walton Arena, the press sat right on the floor, not up in the rafters like we are now, but they right on the floor. And Frank sat right behind us. And during games, Frank would coach hard, from the seats behind us, and he would, he was, it was great. And so you would turn around, and he would be, he was just coaching as hard as he could coach, from the stands. And that was kind of my first, time to really see him. And I will, something else about Frank and that you can't do nowadays, but when Frank was the athletic director, we had his cell phone number. We could call him anytime we wanted to. You'll never see that again. Right. That's something that went out with him, and you'll never see that again. And that was something that was it was really cool at the time.
Right. Yeah. The media accessibility is controlled with a capital C these days. I'm sure you know that firsthand.
Correct. But Frank, for somebody who not from here, didn't know him, didn't know that much background about him, Frank gets a lot of credit for being a football coach here, and as he should. That's what he was at first. He won 144 games, won a national championship, recruited kids to come play here. You got to remember, back then Fayetteville was basically what Farmington is, about that same size. Right. Teams had to fly in and maybe parachute out of a crop duster, one at a time to get them here to play a football game. So. What he did as an AD, to me, in my opinion, far supersedes what he ever did as a football coach. Because if you start when you exit off of the interstate and you see Baum Stadium, then you roll up Razorback, road. None of that is possible without Frank Broyles. None of it.
Right. That's part of the long legacy, certainly, of Frank Broyles. We'll leave it there with Chip Souza, sports editor of the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. When we come back, we'll have more on the life of Frank Broyles from our content partner at KATV Channel 7.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
In 1957, Frank Broyles had only been the head football coach at Missouri for 1 year when he learned the Arkansas job was open.
But the Arkansas job is one I'd wanted since 1948. And I remember the night, it was 7:31 and 30 seconds on December the 6th, I got a call from John Barnhill, the athletic director, and he said, "Hello, Frank, this is Barney." And I said, "What the heck you been waiting on?" And he was the AD, and he joked, he laughed, and I've been trying to get all the ducks on the pond. I said, "Well, where are they?" He said, "They're all swimming." I said, "I'll be there tomorrow." And that was the deal.
When Broyles took the field with the Razorbacks in 1958, it was the beginning of a half-century-long career that would change Arkansas sports forever. In 19 seasons, Broyles led the Hogs to 7 Southwest Conference championships and a school record 22-game winning streak in the early 60s. In the middle of that streak, an undefeated season in 1964 and a shared national championship.
Well, it's long, my memory's not that good, except it was a great victory. And anytime that you end up, and I think we were named national champions after that. So it had great memories for all of our fans, all the players that participated. It's something that's you always look back to, is when you ended up number one, you take great pride in it.
While Broyles left his mark on the football program, it was his time as athletic director that he would lay the foundation for unprecedented success.
My timing was perfect in that when I came here, we sponsored football and basketball and a little bit of track, and that was it. There was no women's sports at that time. So during my time here, all the time that I was assistant as head coach, and it had been announced that I'd be the AD when John Barnhill stepped down, I would travel around the state and people would say to me, "Can we have an all-sports program rather than just football and basketball? My son's a baseball player. He had to leave the state, he ran track or whatever." And I said, "We're going to have an all-sports program." So the minute I became athletic director, we hired coaches and gave scholarships for all the sports the Southwest Conference had rather than just 2.
And Coach Broyles showed a real talent for hiring talent. Over the next 30 years, he brought in coaches who would lead Razorback sports to new heights. Track coach John McDonald became the most successful college coach in history with 42 national championships. Nolan Richardson would lead the basketball program to their first national championship. But Broyles also earned a reputation of being quick to run his coaches off. Football coach Lou Holtz was fired after the 1983 season, even though he'd won nearly 3/4 of his games. His successor, Ken Hatfield, left town after 1989 with an even better winning percentage. And his successor, Jack Crow, was famously fired 1 game into the 1992 season after losing to the Citadel. But Broyles created his biggest firestorm when he axed Nolan Richardson in 2002, after only his second losing season in 17 years. Richardson said he'd been unfairly treated because he is black and dared Broyles to fire him. Broyles did, and Richardson sued. His lawsuit was later dismissed. But Broyles' legacy is most visible by walking around campus, a master fundraiser. Broyles brought in more than $200 million to renovate facilities and build new ones. The football stadium was enlarged by 10,000 seats in 1985 and again in 2001 to 72,000 seats. Under his watch, the new baseball stadium, basketball arena, and 2 separate track and field facilities were built. In 1990, Broyles led the charge to take Arkansas out of the Southwest Conference and into the SEC, a decision that is universally seen as helping Arkansas become an even stronger national program.
I'm proud and happy of the support the people of Arkansas had for the Razorback program, which included my support for me. But basically, they were supporting the idea that the University of Arkansas represents the state of Arkansas, and we want it to excel and be nationally competitive. Our goal was for the fans of Arkansas to be proud that we could have a program in Arkansas that can compete with anybody in the country in all sports, and we've proven that.
In 1999, Broyles lobbied to move all Razorback football games back to Fayetteville, a move that infuriated fans in central and southern Arkansas. A compromise was ultimately reached with a long-term contract to play 2 games a year at War Memorial, a contract that his successor, Jeff Long, worked to modify to 1. Broyles retired in 2007, but remained visible. He still held an office at the Razorback Foundation offices, and just in 2013, he was on hand to be honored with a new statue erected outside the complex that bears his name. His memory will live on. His name is on the football field, an award trophy honoring the nation's best assistant coach and the minds of the Razorback family.
I was in the leadership role for 52 years. And so that's a remarkable career, to be in the same school for that time and be in a leadership role. The support that they gave, but the reason that they gave it, many of the reasons were that we're all passionate about the Hogs and they want the leadership to be successful. So the support comes because we're all part of the team, the family, the Razorback family.